I'm Chrissy Deal. I am the Director of Leadership and Art and Social Change Grants at Bonfils-Stanton Foundation. Today, you all will share your thoughts about leadership, your role in the communities that you serve and that you come from, and more. So welcome.
Encouraging our artists and our constituents to use their voice.
Now's the time for us to be building longer tables.
It's more essential than ever to collaborate. Relationships are the secret sauce of how things get done.
I took it as he called some of us old, but you know, I'm not.
Hello, everybody. I am thrilled to be here with you today. We are clearly in a moment where leadership is being redefined by the pressures that we're facing, by the communities that we are serving, and the futures that we imagine. And I look forward to being in dialogue with you today. Let's just start with, what are you facing at this moment in your lives and in your careers, and folks who are leading important change in our community right now?
My name is Carbonell, and I run an organization called Slam Nuba, pronouns he, him, his, and Slam Nuba provides cultural and artistic experiences for everyone, but mainly Black and brown people, centered around the literary performing arts. And what am I not going through? I'll say that, you know. When it comes to leadership, I just turned 30 this past year, and I'm coming into my own of, you know, really figuring out where I take place in the community. And I think for Slam Nuba, at this like socio-political time when our freedom of speech is really being challenged, and my organization is all about creating platforms for people to speak their mind, whether it's through poetry or through comedy or through music. And I just want to, you know, continue encouraging our artists and our constituents to use their voice, especially in a time of when they want you to be silent. And I think as a leader, it's important for me to just use my voice in that way of, no, I will not be silent, or knowing when to speak and when to listen, and navigating that balance. And that balance is what seems to be what I'm going through at this current moment.
Jevon Taylor, CEO of Green Spaces. Green Spaces is a community hub that serves minority-owned businesses, kind of creating a community space for remote workers, as well as an event space. And kind of what I'm going through, similar to what you were saying, like this is the time where, you know, we're being challenged to create a new norm. And my role in the community is essentially to provide spaces where we historically haven't been represented or don't represent anymore due to gentrification. And Denver's going through a lot of changes in the overall scheme of things. Like, this is the role Green Spaces plays is pretty essential, because I think it's more essential than ever to like really collaborate and create new mergers, create new spaces where people feel safe to do that. And so I'm excited to see what we create in these next coming years, and who we can collaborate with.
Hey y'all, I'm Rossina, Schroeer-Santiago. I'm the founder of the Therapist of Color Collaborative, and my pronouns are she, her. A bit about our work at TOCC is really, a lot of it lies right in the tagline, we are a place where therapy looks like you. When it was created, it was just on the front side of all of the incidents from George Floyd to COVID, and it was really a time when we were separated and not connected, but our mental health suffered in ways that we weren't talking about. I didn't know at the time when I created the collaborative like what it was going to evolve in, but it was precisely like what we need in this time when we think about the landscape of what we're looking at, right? TOCC has since continued to evolve, and it is a place where culture meets care. We are changing the language around mental health and helping our communities just have different conversations about it, because we are talking about mental health in ways that we historically just have not, especially in Black and brown communities. And so it's really awesome to have created a space where folks feel safe enough, right? Because safety is always, subjective, but where people feel safe enough to begin having very vulnerable and open discussions. And I think my role in that is just being an orchestrator and a connector of that space to be able to allow our community to see and be able to imagine what those possibilities of healing are. And so I'm really excited that I get an opportunity to lead that and be surrounded by amazing clinicians and usher people through really tender and vulnerable spaces.
I love that you brought that up. I'm Beverly Grant, Moderator Green Marketplace, and my pronouns are she, her, and we. Moderator Green is a wellness platform that is so broad that alignment and collaboration is required in order for it to really be its full self. The alignment and collaboration have been around food literacy, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. Over a 15-year period of working with community, and especially community members that have the least resources, connection, even a loss of their identity because of just feeling despair. You got to start with food sometimes, just getting something nourishing to shift your whole position, to shift how you feel. And what I have found is that we have so much more in common than we do not. And to get people to realize that seeking out what your natural alignment is going to be the key to a sustained relationship. And relationships are the secret sauce of how things get done. Relationships drive the direction of policy, the direction of movements. I've done a lot of focusing on nurturing ways to build relationships that have appropriate reciprocity. Because so many times we find ourselves in positions where we're overgiving and we're not receiving what we need. I feel that leadership, has to be open. It has to be a forum of a lot of listening, because you don't know what you need to lead if you aren't listening.
Love what you said about relationships. My name is Joie. I'm a community organizer, but my day job is Colorado Asian Pacific United, and we work to unearth and elevate suppressed and erased narratives from the local Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. We ask the question, what does it mean when we can tell our own stories? In sort of reflection about community and what we're going through in this current socio-political climate, I think all of us here, and most people generally know that we are beholden to our communities. We owe each other a lot, right? The question that I want to pose to the broader public is, who do you even consider your community? Who are your people? And I say that because, every morning I wake up to messages from my friends who are in Gaza or who have been displaced about being bombarded, about their families being martyred. I wake up to messages from other organizational leaders saying they've lost funding, to news of our local activists, of students across the nation being unlawfully detained for just speaking out on injustices. When we really start to understand that our struggles are interconnected, then we also understand that our liberations are interconnected. Now's the time for us to be building longer tables. The entire world is our community. Creating more resilient communities to be able to get through whatever's going on, and really understanding that now's the time to be steadfast in our work. Now's the time to ensure that we can take care of each other and really perceive and understand that all of us are interconnected, and it will take all of us to reach liberation.
That's so great, Joie. And Erik Hicks, pronouns he, him, his, with Metro Caring, and Metro Caring works to provide nutritious food to community and while building a movement to end hunger at its root. We have an obligation to break down those barriers. What we're seeing, what we're going through is breaking socioeconomic scales. It affects all of us on the ground level, and to understand that our neighbors are everyone, regardless of where you come from or your background. The racial wealth gap is huge within this country, and for us to review that and to think that's okay without stepping to the forefront, whether it's people who do have access and that privilege or people who are most impacted, you have to be connected. We all have to be connected in order for us to make real change. And at Metro Caring, what we really want to do is have people who are being the most impacted step to the forefront if they're comfortable, and making sure that there are spaces that they can affect change, and that we're not speaking for anyone. Everyone are speaking for themselves, and we're coming together to collaborate. I'm just excited to hear all of this dialogue, because there are leaders in this space. We're going through, we're sharing similar stories of what we're going through. We are all leading the charge in terms of how we get through it.
So I'm JoAnna Cintrón. I'm with Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. We're different because we are not an endowed foundation, so everything we fundraise goes straight back into community, and we do that because we support community organizations that typically don't receive traditional philanthropic funding. What we're seeing so much is organizations obviously losing funding and then feeling this competitive nature with each other around, well, we can't collaborate because they have more funding than we do, or they have that funder, and if we're collaborating, they're gonna get the funding and we're not, we're gonna be doing the work. I think there's a lot of trying to figure out how we teach collaboration as a hard skill, how we actually set up collaboration in the infrastructure, because we kind of talk about collaboration in this like ethereal sense that, yeah, we should collaborate, but there's not like hard skills, there's not parts that support folks. And so creating that infrastructure to me feels really important, because I don't want it to get to a situation where one community organization is doing work and not getting credit and not getting funding, and then suddenly they don't have ownership over something that they've put time and effort into, particularly when you look at our communities who have historically and purposely been fractured. This could be one of those times where either we fracture further or we really, truly, truly come together. And I think that we are defined by the root causes, by settler colonialism, by all of those things that are affecting so many places around the world. And if we don't see that, I don't know where we go from here if we don't see that for each other.
I think back to my time that I've already spent with you in conversation, and how I and the other alumni fellows that you met, Jay and Joie, talked about what the fellowship represented for them, and the opportunity to step back and to reflect and to imagine what's possible with this investment. I would love to hear what ideas are bubbling up, or maybe they're kind of, shooting out with force right now around having this time to explore new dimensions of yourself as leaders and applying some of those experiences or skills or whatever it is that you're kind of collecting or amassing through the course of this fellowship, and ideas that you have around applying that to your work. So, things that you're excited about trying, aspects of who you are as a person, as an individual who happens to also lead an organization or an enterprise, and how you're really looking forward to exploring that kind of uncharted territory in some regards.
Yeah, personally, I think, all of us talk, I think one of the key themes is sustainability. And I think during this time, I think it's important for all of us to kind of expand on the definition on what sustainability means, having to go beyond just like the traditional definition of, saving trees, and how do we create ecosystems and create new models for what ecosystems can look like. And so to answer your question, Chrissy, I think my goal is to travel and figure out where these things are being executed on a high level and kind of bring those back to what I'm doing.
It's a great point. You mentioned sustainability. One of the things that I spoke to one of the alumni, what they mentioned when I said, hey, what was the greatest thing that you were able to do with your investment? And they said therapy. And I want to talk about not only the sustainability for our organizations and our work, but sustainability in ourselves and remaining in the work. And that's something that is extremely important in taking care of ourselves. Too often we focus on the external and focusing on other people and making sure that other people are taken care of. I'm projecting because this is definitely me, but just not taking care of yourself and stepping back and making sure that you're okay. And I think that's something for sure traveling and seeing where these things are executed. I talked about change management. I talked about, shifts in administration and seeing in which countries, how they handled such drastic shifts in administration. But for me is really focusing on that self-care and making sure that I'm sustained.
I can connect with that. I think it's a lot of things for me. It's caring for myself, but also giving myself an opportunity to learn. I've shared with you all going into the lab, right? And giving myself that opportunity to just expand my ideas, because I've been flirting with this idea of having two entities, and now it's like closer than it's ever been. And so I really just want to have this time to just like nurture myself and learn, and not have to take myself away from like what I'm doing, but get the needed support to be able to do, this lift. I think, with Alchemy Center for Community Wellness that's coming, it's going to be that hub, and it's going to be another ecosystem. And I'm just super excited to envision those possibilities to invest in something that's helping me fulfill a little bit about what I feel is my purpose and a bit of my work that I have to give, but also, again, create a space for community, because a lot of what I think our work is it taps into that social responsibility. And I think each of us have done that because we've had the luxury to, whether it's education, whether it's, travel, whatever, right? We've had this luxury. And so this next lift for me is going to be my gift back to the community, right? I don't want to say love gift, but I guess kind of a love gift back to the community, to let our community see that we all deserve to be able to come into spaces where we're looking at our whole person and not just one aspect of it. And so that's what I'm most excited for.
I think I'm kind of like at the opposite spectrum of it. This is a gift to myself, all right? Selfishly and unselfishly, like I have been giving to the community since before I even graduated high school. My community is celebrating me in this moment because number one, it's not common for someone like myself, coming from being a Ward of State, college dropout, entrepreneur since I was 18, have had no formal job, have built every single job that I've had and sustained, learning the nonprofit industrial complex from the ground up, from doing every single role, from teaching in schools and facilitating to program coordination to fundraising and development and grant writing and being an executive director. They say, like, I've always had, and me and the homies, we've always had these great ideas and these projects, and it's like, oh, if we just had money. Oh, if we just had the money to do this. And they say, when that bag finally arrives, will you be ready? And I think I am lucky to be in a place where I am ready. Everything is set, ready to go. All the ideas are in place. The structures are in place. The people are in place that I've spent the past 10 to 12 years gathering. Now it's time to connect the dots.
No, that's dope, bro. I think it's cool to be in that space because it allows you to see yourself in a higher light. I remember there was a time like a couple years ago where I told my team, I was like, we're not bootstrapping anymore. Like you get to a point where like you just bootstrap your way to success, and it's just like you build those mental habits of that too, and it's just like, I'm not doing that anymore. We're gonna get funding and we're gonna do this right. And so that's dope, bro. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's exhausting tap dancing for dollars.
It's not sustainable. Yeah,
no,
for sure.
It's not.
A word that we hear along with sustainability is resilience. You really can't get to being resilient without being sustainable first. What I'm looking at right now is When you are doing something unorthodox and you have proven methods, when you have experienced a constant lack of investment just because you don't fit this or you don't fit that, that wears on you. And so you have to learn to like break out of that, break those habits. And I feel like that is what's happening now. I feel like we're on the crux of a very big reorganization. What leaders look like, how leaders lead, leadership. What does that even mean? You know, and how are we delivering that? And so I thought about something you said around there's no skills around collaboration. I agree. I agree. Now, for myself, I developed something called community weaving, which is how I've built my work in business over these years. And in essence, it is a way to network, collaborate, build relationships, but in alignment first. Like starting with what is the mission or what are we seeking? And then let that be the thing to draw the other people there. When you actually work in alignment, you know, with whoever's at the table, that reciprocity is no longer a factor because it's going to flow, because everyone has value. That word right there, value. That is such an overused word, but not really used appropriately. When we hear that word value, we tend to go to monetary versus recognizing that every natural born creature already has value. How can we honor that value and accept it and work in tandem with it? And I feel like that's the space I'm in right now. My desire to serve my community. How can this be done in a way that's resilient, where it's the gift that keeps on giving? The way that we approach alignment is really at the nucleus of that all. And I feel that in my worst times when, you know, others devalued me, the value that I was able to build within community is what sustained me, because they're like, we see you, we feel you, we know you, we love you. And that wasn't dollars that I was receiving, but it was direct action, resources. And so these are the things we have to look at, is abandoning the siloing that we just tend to do because we've been conditioned to do that. That feels scary, you know, to like let that go and then just step out into open space. Us here together, we're going to be able to articulate these ways of breaking out of these molds. Like Jevon said, creating ecosystems that actually consider the people being served, the people that are doing the service, you know.
When you were talking, a funny memory popped up in my head. Every year, Mo Better Greens throws a Juneteenth festival. Maybe 7-8 years ago, us being out there in the Charles Cousins Plaza in 5 Points on Welton Street. And it's so funny that we're out there, and then the city, they started their own Juneteenth festival. That being overlooked or not being included in, but still always doing our own thing for the people, by the people, for us, by us.
From my perspective, we're in a period of great undoing, which does not come without serious consequences. And I also choose to see the potential of this time. When I do think about that potential, I am often drawn to art and artists who are helping me understand and interpret what's happening and what I'm witnessing and what I'm experiencing. So I would love to hear thoughts from you all about how art and culture is being woven into your current view of the world that we exist in right now, and also in your role as community leaders.
I think that especially in this time, given the current political climate, what we really need is a radical imagination and creativity for us to envision what is that liberated world that we're going towards, that we're trying to build. Because if we can't envision it, then that's like the first step, right? You need to be able to envision it. And a lot of the work that we do at CAPU is we do a lot of what I call inside and outside methods. We want our stories to be told within the systems, right? We want our K-12 curriculum to have stories about Denver's forgotten Chinatown. But we also acknowledge that the systems were not built for us. We also do a lot of work outside of systems, meaning we use things like art to figure out how do we tell our stories in a way that's genuine to our communities. For example, we are working with a young Hmong American researcher right now who's been collecting Hmong American stories for her thesis. And so we've been really excited for her. We're going to go and support her at her defense. What we are asking from her too is, okay, how does this research go back into community? So we have your research existing in academia within the system, and that's exciting. But how can we make sure that these stories are still told within community? So what we've been really working on and thinking about is using traditional Hmong story cloths that use textile to tell the story, and seeing if we can use some textiles or other ways of interpreting these stories to be gifted back to the families that she interviewed.
That's amazing. I think artists are a lot of times the one overlooked, and to your point, like being in the system, don't really fit the mold of what a leader could look like or what activism looks like, because like they're painting or they're rapping or they're doing some of the creative, and it's not like they're not on a podium with a suit and with a tie, you know, all like jazzed up. But I think it's important for us to like look at how do we provide them more platforms? How do we create more channels where their voices or art or whatever can be heard or seen on these bigger platforms where, you know, mass audiences are. Like take these hidden gems that have amazing talents, amazing ways to express these thoughts and ideas and give a platform to it. Through these unique partnerships that we're talking about, you know, use that as another channel as well.
If you go back in any movement, there's been music behind it, right? And I think about Marvin Gaye and What's Going On. I think about most recently Kendrick Lamar and it's and All Right. And from that aspect, I think that what we started incorporating was how do we bring artists to the forefront for whether it's storytelling, drawing, painting, and artistry, and or music. There's joy, there's pain, there's uncertainty, and it is a microcosm of what we're seeing on the ground and the feelings that people are having, and it helps us work through that pain, work through that joy to understand each other and understand the issues.
Yeah. I love that you use that word artistry, because that was the word I wanted to bring into here to say that art is actually everywhere and it's a part of everything we do. We don't view it that way. I think about the artistry that happens in the kitchen, that when I get a plate, that's artistry. When I think about farming and gardening, that's artistry. This is some of the siloing that we're struggling to break down, to even recognize that art is everywhere, that art is an expression. We have boxed it in to only mean certain things in certain contexts. I think about Rossina and the clinicians, you know, people think, oh, there's no artistry there. Yes, there is artistry there. It's the artistry of emotion that's happening and processing. When we are building with community and people, that's artistry in motion. That's a reciprocal, symbiotic situation that's happening right there. We're receiving so much that we're not able to process. At the same time, we're giving, we're rendering. And so that's artistry, you know, that I love that expression, poetry in motion. That's us every day, all day. From the time we wake up, we are poetry in motion. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it is joyful, but it's still artistry. I want us to think about the artistry that lives in everything we do.
Well, that's the alchemy that you were talking about. It's like you alchemize this pain and this joy and all these emotions and you put it into a physical form.
I think, and we're talking about the intersection, I came into the nonprofit industry because I am an artist, and there is no avenue for me to make any money and sustain as an artist. When we talk about my organization, who is reaching their 30-year mark next year, has only received one grant in 30 years. Why is that? And it's because a lot of artists were not focused on the business side of it. They did not know how to access funds. They were dedicated to the craft. It's just important to be an artist as it is to be an arts administrator. And the people who love what artists do, who love music, who love poetry, who love comedy, that is your opportunity to be an arts administrator. And allowing room for the people who are creating to be able to create, and the business side to still happen, so we can have industries of our own that are not conglomerates and people aren't being exploited, and you can really survive and make pure things.
In your opinion, is the world getting better or worse, and why?
I think every era has its own challenges, and it just creates more opportunities, especially being people of color. Like, we've always had some type of barrier to cross or hurdle to jump over, and this is nothing new. This is just even if now we have more resources, there's more channels for us to go through, and we're able to stand on the shoulders of people that were before us. When you think of it from that standpoint, it gives you a sense of hope, because it's we've been doing this. So I don't think it's getting better or worse. I think it's the same. It's just, we've all evolved, the problems have evolved, and we just found new purpose, and there's new ways, new channels to go about it.
I would kind of agree with you. Yeah, I don't know that it's gotten better or worse. I think we are just kind of at a space where we haven't seen any version of the progress that's needed, in our communities. I have this one statistic that's talking about from the Surgeon General, and it was from 1980s. And it's literally the exact same thing that we're facing right now. When we think about just where we are and what we're doing, from leadership and art and everything that's infused in what's ahead of us, I think it's looking at the possibilities, right? I like how you say we have been exploring and doing different things, and we've continued to evolve and grow. Just because what we're in right now, it doesn't stop us. And sitting here as testimony to that, right? We've all gotten creative. We all have begun doing work, and we've all evolved out of things that didn't exist before we started doing them. I do believe there's just something really beautiful about the human spirit, in that it desires to transcend its adversity. And so we are proof that we are transcending the difficulty that this world is in, despite all of that, and we're still making a way. And we're forging pathways for others to see that too. We're creating spaces and holding spaces. And I love your word literacy, because I use it in mental health literacy. We're teaching people about things. We're exposing them to things that they haven't been exposed to. There's this word I use in therapy, soul hum. We can just kind of vibrate on kind of this soul hum collectively, so that we can see what's possible.
I've never heard that, but that's very in line with how I'm feeling about the world today, in the sense that there are some lower vibration hums and there are higher vibration hums, and I think I've been lucky. I've been part of what I would say the higher vibration, and so right now it's not this better or worse, it's this meeting of the two, and there are a lot of low vibrations that are in charge, but there's so many of us that have been vibrating on a higher level. I can't wait to see what happens with that. It's really scary, but it's also really beautiful to know that we've been putting our attention towards something and been doing the beautiful work and been resilient and have been around this whole time. There's a lot of jokes about it feeling like end of times, but it's also if it ends, something else is going to begin, and we're the seeds of that new beginning.
I organize the same regardless of whoever's in political power. doesn't matter if it's better or worse, the work is always there. The work is always there, it's always important, and it's always meaningful to do. And I think that's something like all of us here really understand, you know, at the end of the day, like our communities have been doing this work, will continue to do this work, and really, you know, we got us.
Right, I agree with that. And it is kind of like adversity is a birth canal that brings forth what we need. When you look at the history of blacks in this country who have never been given their proper appreciation, acknowledgement for so many things. We invented practically everything, but do we get the credit for that? Okay, no. We invented these things to make it better since we had to do the work. When it became a novel concept, well, then it was adopted, you know, universally. That spirit, that drive, that will to achieve, to overcome, to be, to do, that isn't going to change. It makes me think of a saying my grandmother used to say, you got to tear up before you clean up. And so this is kind of what I feel we're going through right now. Stuff is getting ripped down, getting burned up, but we're about to see what's going to come forth. And we here are representatives of the unafraid and ready to get down.
Now look at this group and just so inspiring. I think Jevon mentioned the intergenerational aspect of this group as well. I took it as he called some of us old, but you know, I'm not. What I'll say overall is that the power just in this group and the work that we're doing is inspiring, and it fuels me, and I hope I can give off that energy as well.
I think for your question, number one, it's a matter of who, you know, who's it better for or who's it worse for? I love the fact that things are getting worse because these systems are crumbling and are no longer sustainable. And although they kept us sheltered and safe to a degree for a long time, now we have a chance to experience freedom in a way that our predecessors never got a chance to.
It is an honor for Bonfils-Stanton Foundation to support your continued flourishing, your growth, your exploration. There's so much wisdom and beauty in this room, in what you shared, in the hopes that you have expressed for your communities, for the future. And it is truly an honor to be able to travel along your journey, a portion of your journey, and to be partners with you as you continue to explore and do all the incredible things that you do. So thank you so much for opening yourself up to this opportunity, and we are thrilled to be alongside you and look forward to all the things that have yet to come. Thank you.